He's been with Williamson County for 36 years, starting out as a firefighter. He's currently the Williamson County Director of Public Safety. I'd like him to start moving this way right now. The title for his presentation is Tower, Trip, and Transmitter Tour. He is K4COM. Let's have a warm welcome for Bill Jorgensen.
Thank you, Hoop. So what Hoop asked me to do was do a presentation on the link repeater system. Well, I've added a few other slides to this, and I hope it's okay, Hoop, and I hope it's okay with everybody else. But first thing we're going to talk about is a bike flag, an 1968 orange crate Schwinn. I don't know if anybody in here had one of those. What a great bicycle. I wish I still had that bike, because they're going for about $5,000 on eBay right now. That was an $85 bike back then. Look at all that chrome on there. And then the Senior Space Patrol Archer handheld radio with a CW key, and I think it operates on CB channel 14. And I'm going to ask the question what all these might have in common. Does anybody know what they might have in common? Mobile operations. Very good. That's very good. So what Hoop didn't tell you about me is when I built my first antenna. So I'm very thankful to my dad. He was not an amateur radio operator, but he got me hooked up with this Senior Space Patrol radio. And I broke the antenna on it. And there was a fellow across the street, speaking of Great Britain, he used to sit on his patio, I remember as a kid. I was probably about 8. And he would listen to the BBC every day. He was out there listening to the BBC. And I was talking with him. I used to ride my orange crate over there. And we were talking about how can we make this radio talk further. Anyway, I took a piece of copper wire and ran it up that bike flag and then just twisted it around where the antenna broke off on that handheld radio, and I was able to talk all over the neighborhood. I'm also appreciative of my dad, and we put up, I had a little AM clock radio in my bedroom, I remember this, and we put up a wire in a tree. I mean, nope, has anybody else in this room put a wire in a tree? Can I see a show of hands? It's okay, you can admit it. And I appreciate you minimizing at your house and not bringing stuff back. I understand how you feel. So, anyway, I was on eBay this week putting this presentation together, and which I finished this morning at 7:15. And I told Hoop that's the way I operate under pressure. I'm better under pressure. I purchased 2 of those radios. So the next meeting, I'll bring them in. They're brand new in the box. Now, obviously, they're used, but they look pristine and brand new. And I've got a new grandchild. We might have to go through this same exercise with him and just spread the love. So a presentation wouldn't be complete without sharing some of my photos from a family vacation. So I'm going to start out with that. And I'm sorry, Hoop, we'll get to the repeaters here in just a second. And I'm sorry if everybody else has got to put up with this. I went to Colorado, and maybe Alex Kelly, W2W, he may be on Zoom today watching. He said he was going to try to watch. Went out to Colorado, stayed at the Kelly Inn and Suites. They got a great place there in Lafayette. And I think Steve Waterman's been to that hotel there. But these are my family photos, and I haven't shared these with anybody else. So we were in Rocky Mountain National Park at 13,785 feet. In Alex's truck, he went out of town. We stayed in his house. It was really nice. And actually, it's his wife's truck. And I brought a KX3 with me. Oh, and my wife came too. She's in the front logging. She's never done that before, but you can see the thrill in her face right there. And I did take some pictures of the scenery. I don't know. This is up in the tundra, up on the, I forget the name of the road that goes from one end of the Rocky Mountain National Park to the other, but you can see the nice horizon there. Here's another picture of that road. I don't know if you see a theme happening here with these family photos, but. And then at Alex's house, he restores microphones, which he does a really great job. And you see a TS-2000 there. It may have got used while we were staying in that great location. And then this was on the way to the airport. This is my final family photo from this trip. You can see these towers here. Now, I had never seen this before. These cell towers have windmills on top of them. I don't know if y'all have ever seen a tower with a windmill on top, but anyway, those are my family photos. Just had to share them. I figured this might be the right group. I can't show those at home. They think I'm crazy, so this is probably the appropriate place to share these photos. So we'll go ahead and get started on the tower trip and transmitter tour, which really it's the 4 T's, right? A lot of this history, and y'all have done an excellent job, WCARES, is actually on WCARES.org. So you can read more detail about how we got to where we're at today. But I'll go back to 2000, 2003, and I got connected up with the gentleman that owned the 145.210 machine, which I think is the monster machine out of all the machines, even though it's not the hub. The 145.210 machine located up in Brentwood, and I'm going to show you some pictures, it covers from Kentucky all the way down to Alabama. Don't know how that happens, but it does. The county purchased that repeater and then moved it to Murray Lane. It was on an old AT&T microwave site, long haul site there on Murray Lane, not too far between Murray Lane and Granny White Pike, not too far from Brentwood High School. It was up on that ridge. We replaced that repeater with a new Kenwood repeater with a 100-watt amplifier, and it resided there for a few years. Later on in that year, we received some Homeland Security grants, put up a tower in Brentwood. The tower sites that we're going to talk about today, you will forget as you leave the room because we don't talk about exact locations, right? Not that this is out there and publicly available, but it's on Longstreet Drive, and it's on the top of the tower. A lot of the amateur radio antennas, as we talk about those today, the antennas are on top of the tower, free and clear from any metal, and they've got wide open spaces to communicate. So we moved the 145.210 machine to Longstreet Drive and then purchased 2 more UHF repeaters and 1 VHF repeater. We put in the Franklin Hub repeater, which is 444025, and then originally 145.13 was at the landfill, and then we moved it to Fairview. And then the 443.750 repeater is in Kirkland. Does everybody know where Kirkland is? It's a split in the road. It's on Telefair Road. It is really the only amateur radio repeater that we have that's on a commercial tower. It's a FM transmitter, so I think there's 4 FM stations out there, and we're right below those FM stations. I think it's about a 440-foot tower. It is actually right on the Rutherford County, Williamson County line. And I mean literally, because the guy wires for the tower are in Rutherford County. The actual base of the tower is in Williamson County. So this shows where all the towers are at and how they moved. You'll see how the Brentwood tower moved a little bit southeast, and then the 1.3 repeater moved from the landfill to Fairview. And this is the repeaters right now that make up the system, but then around 2006, working with the Friends of Wireless, FOW, and some people refer to the 1.5 repeater as the FOW repeater, Friends of Wireless, and there's a whole history there, and some of the board members of the Friends of Wireless are sitting in this room right now. But you'll see we added that repeater. Now currently that repeater is at our Century Court site because we are going to take down the tower at the FOW site. That land was donated to us, and we're going to replace it with a 180-foot tower. We already have the tower, the building, and the generator, and then we'll move the 1.5 machine repeater back to that site. So it'll look kind of like this. And that gives us a UHF and a VHF repeater at two separate locations in Franklin, in the center of the county. In 2019, Williamson County put in a P25 700 megahertz digital encrypted trunked radio system for public safety. Public safety, previous to that, we're using these Tates TB80 100 watt repeaters. Well, and it was in a simulcast system, so there were multiple repeaters around Williamson County on UHF and VHF that were simulcasting for public safety. What really would have been cool is to left one of those UHF repeaters and simulcast 444025 at like 5 different sites around the county. I don't know anybody else who's simulcast amateur radio like that, to where all the transmitters come up at the exact same time on the same frequency. I don't know. Is Nashville doing something like that? Well, if we had done it in 2009, we probably would have done it before Nashville. So, but South Carolina's got one. Anyway, we took these repeaters and we were able to use them and replaced all the Kenwood repeaters. So now we didn't have a separate repeater with an amplifier, and we put all these repeaters in place. So every single repeater that's on the WCARES repeater system is now a Tate. And these are continuous duty repeaters. We do not have problems with these repeaters, hardly at all. All the tower sites are county owned except one. They meet the G standards. You can look that up, but part of the G standards is that the tower, with all the apparatus on the tower, so all the antennas and everything else and the mounts, can withstand ½ inch of radial ice, 90-mile-an-hour winds at the same time, and the structure should still be standing. Now, maybe the antennas might break off, but the structure should still be intact. Also part of that G standard is seismic protection, and all that has to do with what's in the ground under the tower. There's a lot in the ground under the tower. And speaking of grounding, this picture here says alarm relay. Because there's been problems with copper thefts, if anybody cuts any of our grounding outside the facility, inside the facility, starts yanking on that copper, this alarm goes off, and there's a group of people that gets notified that that's happening, that there's a problem with the grounding. Now that could also happen too from a lightning strike. Y'all probably saw this morning that you couldn't get through the gate. You can't come through this side door. The back gate has issues. Building's still secure, but we took a lightning strike here night before last, and it took out some of our electronics for our system. Each site has concrete shelters, battery backup, generators that can run for 3 to 4 days, self-sustaining. They run on diesel fuel. We picked diesel fuel because we can haul diesel fuel. A lot of tower sites use natural gas and propane. We can't haul propane. We can't haul natural gas. That comes through the main and the ground. So diesel fuel we can move around, and the county government keeps quite a bit of diesel fuel on hand at different places that we have access to. We monitor for lightning strikes, heat, smoke, entry, and then the grounding alarms I talked about. Each site also has dual tandem AC and heat units in the buildings. There's a device in there that connects them together, so they alternate between each of the AC and heat units. And if one were to fail, the alternate is the other one keeps running while we get that repaired. We'll run through what is at a repeater site or at a tower site that runs the repeaters for Williamson County. So this is a WCARES. This is a remote site, so we have the Tate repeater. We've got an RLC, repeater link controller. I think the model is the Club repeater link controller, and it gateways the repeater at the site to the donor radio. So either this is UHF, VHF repeater with an RLC, and that links it to the donor radio. The donor radio is programmed for the hub repeater. The hub repeater for this system is 444025, which is in Franklin. So all the outline repeaters talk to the hub repeater through that Kenwood radio that's sitting there, that mobile radio, and it has its own antenna with a directional, a Yagi pointing towards Franklin. That's why it takes just a second. When you key up on a remote repeater, it's good to just take a half a breath and then start talking, because when you key up, it takes a second for this all to connect up and get back to the hub repeater, and then the hub repeater transmits and sends it back out to the other 3 repeaters. So it takes just a second for all that to happen. The hub repeater is a repeater. It doesn't have a link controller. It doesn't have a donor radio. It's just a standalone repeater. So we'll use the Brentwood repeater as an example. You've got a portable over there on the left-hand side, and they're talking into the repeater. The 210 repeater is repeating that information. The repeater, with an audio cable, sends the audio to the repeater link controller. The repeater link controller digests that audio, sends it to the donor radio. The donor radio then keys up the hub repeater, the 444025 repeater. You need to note the repeater tail. One of those questions may be, and I forgot about the beeping, and I'll talk about that. But the repeater tail on the hub repeater is extremely short. And it's extremely short by design because we don't need a repeater tail on that coming back through. It could start ping-ponging back and forth with all the other repeaters. And then once you key up the one repeater, then it doesn't stop. It would keep ping-ponging back and forth. So that is why the repeater tail on the hub repeater is so short. When you key it up, you don't really hear a repeater tail, but it's there. The beeping that you hear after you key up a remote repeater, that just tells you that if it's a local person, and I can't remember if it's high-low or low-high, but both of those are there. It tells you if somebody's coming through the link back to that repeater, or if somebody is local on that repeater. So if I'm using the 210 repeater and I hear boop, boop, it means I'm on that repeater, and the other person goes boop, boop. That means they were coming through the link through another repeater and coming back through, if that makes sense. How much time did I have, Hoot? Did I have 2 hours? Probably not.
As much time as you need.
All right. Now we're going to take a quick transmitter tour. This is the second part of the presentation. We've talked about how the system works. Now we're actually going to go visit the transmitter sites. This was great. I think I did this last night and took the pictures. Now, I did do it last week. It was good to get out to the tower sites, see what's going on out there. And we have somebody at the sites. There's somebody at one site, our communications folks, just about every week. Or maybe even somebody from this room is out at our sites. So we'll start with the hub repeater. We'll just go, there's the tower. It's a 180-foot tower. It's located on Century Court. Matter of fact, when you pull out of here today, look to your right. The sun should be just about right, and that steel should be glistening in the morning sun. There could be some dew hanging off some of those. Feel free to take pictures of it.
Beautiful.
Take it home to your better half. This is a gorgeous tower. This is one of the ones we put up, one of the first few we put up using Homeland Security funds. It's got a lot of antennas on it. We do not use this for our public safety push trunking system, other than for a microwave hop. We do have microwave going through it, and we'll talk about the 6 gigahertz microwave we've got connected to it. Most of this on here is UHF, VHF equipment. There's one of our 6 gigahertz microwave shots. This is actually the repeater. I think it's the bottom one there. Is the WCARES hub. The upper repeater, I think, is M-tiers, and we're going to talk about it in just a second. We've also got multiple M-tiers repeaters, but I think nestled in between there is the DMR repeater.
The one with the yellow label.
Yeah, and I don't think I was allowed to talk about DMR repeaters today. That's a whole different presentation. We've got 3 of those up, and I'll stick with the VHF, UHF analog stuff for right now.
GMRS.
Oh, was it GMRS up there also? Yeah, there is I'm not supposed to talk about that either. I think that presentation was already given. Didn't you give a GMRS presentation earlier? Yeah, so that's already been done. If you look on the left-hand side of this slide here, there's a bunch of cans of magic air. These things are absolutely magic. So those are combiners. So for all these UHF and VHF assets, repeaters that are at this site, we don't have an antenna for every radio. That would be so inefficient. So there's for all the UHF, there's 3 UHF antennas on the tower, and there may be 10 radios or 12 radios, repeaters, using those 3 antennas. Well, how does that happen? Well, it's magic. That's why I call these cans, these combiners, magic. And they do filtering, and they allow and they could all be keyed up all at the same time on those 3 antennas with no interference. It is absolutely amazing. But it gets down to that patch cable between the different cans there. Has to be the exact length. These things are engineered. Even all the cabling and everything, and the filtering and everything's all engineered. Those are UHF ones on the right. On the left-hand side, you see the smaller ones are a little bit longer. Those are VHF combiners. And then we have one receive antenna, and that goes through a multi-coupler and brings in all that receive audio and splits it to all the different repeaters. There's all sorts of different antennas on the tower. We use open dipoles, enclosed omnis. They range anywhere from 5 to 9 dB gain. So I did a little math on that, and I'm terrible at math, to be honest. But you figure in, we use anywhere from 7/8 to 1 3/4 hard line from the communication shelter up to the antenna. We're not using, what is that orange stuff there? RG. We are not running RG11, although that's great stuff. We are not running that up the side of a tower. But I think I came up with a 100-watt repeater going into a 9 dB gain antenna with minimal loss is going to be somewhere around 500 watts of effective radiated power, ERP, coming out the antenna. So when we look at the Brentwood antenna, and it's 9 dB, and we say it covers all the way from Kentucky to Alabama, and it's going out the top of a 180-foot tower on one of the tallest hills in Williamson County, that's how it gets its coverage. but that also means it hears also. But usually our transmit's at the top and our receive antennas are further down on the tower. You think about your handhelds just putting out 3 to 4 to 5 watts, somewhere in there, and this is, you're getting talked back to with 500. And we'll talk a little bit about, so we're going back 1989, and when the repeater system started. Have y'all seen this movie? Does it ring a bell? Field of Dreams? If they build it, they will come. You know, WCARES started with 4 or 5 people. And all this is well documented on the WCARES.org website. And now, how many people are involved in WCARES? Now, I saw some new people coming in today, and thank you for being here. How many people? Give me a number. How many?
I think there's 120.
120. That's probably a great number.
Up and down, it has been as much as 185.
Okay, 185 people in WCARES. You know, this is this could be considered, and it may have been last year, the 25th year of WCARES in existence. You know what's great about WCARES? It's the repeater system. It's the support. How many pay dues? If you're paying dues to WCARES, somebody's sliding you one, because I don't know anybody has to pay any dues to be part of WCARES. WCARES, you could call it a club, but it's not your HOA. There's no board. You know, around the country, I've seen so many amateur radio groups fail because of money. Who's going to maintain what? So the county took the approach of if you build it, they will come, and they have come. There's over 380 amateur radio operators in Williamson County now, and a lot of that is due to the classes that are put on and the website. Everything that you do is so important to amateur radio. And not just Williamson County, there's other folks watching what we do here in this county from outside looking in. Oh, another family photo. I'm not sure how that got in there, but isn't that pretty? I figure if we're on a tower site tour, we're here to look at towers. All right, let's talk about the Brentwood repeater real quick. It's located on Long Street Drive. If you've ever been up there, it's a climb. If anybody in here could take a bicycle up there, more power to you, because people have been severely injured coming off that hill in the wintertime and going right out onto Franklin Road. So this is right near Franklin Road and Concord Road. We put up 2 towers. I call this the Twin Towers. Maybe I shouldn't call it that, but that just started this week that I started calling it the Twin Towers. But one tower, we went to put up the public safety radio system at this site. There wasn't enough room. We do structural analysis on the tower. There wasn't enough room on the existing tower where the 210 machine's at, so we had to build another tower next to it. Now, they share connectivity there's fiber running between the 2 buildings there, the 2 shelters. The generator is shared between the 2 shelters. But that's just how it ended up. To share the load of all the antennas, we put up 2 towers. This is you'll see over there on the left-hand side, the dipole, the Omni, on the top. That's 2 antennas. One is flipped over, and the one going out the top, I bet you can guess, that's a VHF antenna. Can anybody know which repeater that's attached to? 210. 145.210, that is the actual antenna on the right and on the top of that tower. The one that may go from Kentucky to Alabama. I don't know. Wow. Inside, and these duplexers are a little dirty. At this site, the repeater goes through a duplexer, which allows transmit and receive through those cans at the same time. It is not going through a combiner or multi-coupler. It's got its own duplexer. And this may help too and reduce loss compared to going through a combiner. But that's the actual 210 machine. Tape repeater, repeater link controller, and a donor radio. And I don't know if I have a slide on this anywhere, but the repeater link controllers are pretty darn smart. So through DTMF, and I don't know who has the code, you may have to flip up a red cover switch and push a red button. I don't know if you got the code, but you can take a repeater link controller and put in a DTMF code to have the repeater stand alone and disconnect from the system. You can put the repeater into monitor only and send the audio back to the hub. So you can disconnect it. So if a repeater had an issue, you can disconnect the repeater from the overall system and let it be and leave the others connected up. You also may be in a situation where there's a lot of traffic and it's exceeding the capacity of the repeater system because so many people want to talk. You could set up 4 different nets in Williamson County, or 5 actually, 5 different nets on repeaters by area around the county, and then have a net control running all 5 of those. Separate net control for each one. All right, let's take a look at the Kirkland site. As I said, it's a commercial. That antenna on the right-hand side there in the middle of the tower, the one that's leaning, that's not ours. I know whose that is, and I'm not going to call them out on it. But the antenna for the UHF repeater that's at this site is actually on the other side of this tower, and you can't see it because it's hidden by all the steel. But we were right around, I think that's around 260 feet is where the UHF antenna is at on this tower. And that's about where the leaning tower or the leaning antenna is, but we're on the other side of that. Inside the facility is, that's the repeater on the left-hand side. Oh, I also took a picture of, we saw 4 Motorola GTR repeaters sitting there that aren't being used. And we called somebody about that, and we're working to try to allocate those. I think one of those may make a good DMR repeater as a backup. But those are not being used, and we contacted the owner. See, it's good to go out to tower sites because you never know what you're going to find. Now, we didn't bring that back home with us. There was cameras everywhere out there. Literally, there was video cameras all over that place, and people were watching it. We'll take a trip out to Fairview. This is at a ball field on 96 North, about a quarter mile north of Highway 100. There's a Williamson County Parks and Rec facility there, and there's a ball field, and this is tucked in the woods. You really don't see it unless you're looking above tree line. This is the 145-13. Matter of fact, the sticker still says landfill on it, but that's actually at. And then I just showed you an example over on the right-hand side of the power that goes through the top of the buildings, and I got another picture to show you the electrical inside these communications facilities. It's quite extensive in the grounding. Motorola does what's called an R56 standard grounding. We asked them to do R57, which is the Williamson County standard of grounding. I made that up. There is no R57, but. All right, we'll run over to Century Court. Well, Century Court, actually, we already looked at, right? It was the hub repeater. We've already taken a look at that. We looked at the tower. Let me take just a second and talk about M-tiers. So you may not, and you can go to the M-tiers website and bring this up. You may not realize that the 94 repeater is at Heritage, which covers Thompson Station and Spring Hill like a blanket. We've got M-tiers repeater sitting there. It's behind Heritage Elementary, and it's in between Thompson Station Park and up there where water tank's at. There's a cell site there too. Verizon keeps complaining we're interfering with their signals, but We were there first. So there's an M-Tiers repeater there, which is tied back to the hub repeater for its same technology, same solution being used here that M-Tiers uses across the state, being tied back to the hub, which is in Nolensville. I'll show you that site in a second. That is probably one of our premier sites. And then 94B is actually at the Century Court site in downtown Franklin, and it ties back to the hub. So there's 2 UHF M-Tiers repeaters that Williamson County maintains that y'all can access. Now, there's a better shot of those. This is the Nolensville site where the M-Tiers hub repeater is located. This is a 330 or 380 foot self-supporting tower. You can see how far those legs are spread apart there. You can see one of our communications technicians, Butch Coulter, standing there near the comm shelter. And then we've got ice protection. Why would we have ice protection in Middle Tennessee over our generator and over all of our microwave dishes? It happens, and I'm going to show you some examples of that. This I call the double wide. Now, I don't know if double wides are allowed in Williamson County, but this shelter is double the size of our other shelters and has 4 HVAC units on it, and they all run in tandem. There's the M-Tiers hub repeater right there, and below that is actually TMAC, which is the state 800 megahertz system. That right there, it's probably hard to see, but you can see downtown Nashville from this site. It's really a great site. From ground level, this is a ground level picture, and you can see the entire skyline downtown Nashville. That's another example of one of our antennas on amateur radio on UHF side, over on the right of that tower, down a little bit. This was an ice bridge that was over one of our microwave, 6 gigahertz microwave shots that took a hit from falling ice. It was further down the tower, and you can see how it bent. It bent all this and destroyed it. We lost, put a crack in the building. We did not have an ice bridge over the generator at the time. It damaged the outer shell of the generator. So now we have a debris shield on top of the generator. It also damaged 2 of our HVAC units at this site from falling ice off the tower. That wasn't too long ago. This is the WindLink that Hilton and a group of folks maintain at the Nolensville site. So there's WindLink assets around the county too. I'll give you an example of the grounding before everything goes in and out of the building. And the entry ports there and all the grounding straps, and then on the left-hand side is electrical. Those duplexers sitting in the background there were left over from our public safety radio system. Things like that we do not get rid of because you never know when you're going to need it, especially for amateur radio use, because you can retune those. And there's a whole UHF antenna sitting on the ground there, dipole. Just to let you know what the digital trunking system looks like, since we're talking about repeaters. There is, I counted them, I think it's 12 repeaters over there on the left-hand side down near the bottom. And then that's our public safety trunking system. And and we can get into a whole conversation about that, but not today, because I was told only talk about UHF, VHF analog. And then the UPS, we have UPS at each of the sites. So everything's on a UPS, and then so if the commercial power goes off, the UPS gets us between commercial power and generator power. Our 6 gigahertz microwave uses waveguide. All the lines are pressurized, so we're running air into the line. So if a piece of hard line were to get a pinhole in it, or not that somebody would shoot a gun at our hard line and put a hole in it, that never happens. But then air would escape, the system would keep working, we'd get an alarm that something's wrong with the air pressure, that it's running all the time, and but the system should keep on running if it gets a pinhole in it. I think that's about it. I don't know if I was allowed to ask for questions. I never asked that, so I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have. I guess you got to use the microphone, right? There's a question back here.
Yeah, if you've got a
and
question,
over here.
grab one of your local microphones. That means that those folks in the room can hear you. We're going to repeat the question so that the Zoom folks can.
Yeah, I can. I'll be glad to do that. Go ahead.
Mike, KJ4, Mike, Indiana. Great presentation, really enjoyed it. Did have a question. You mentioned about reconfiguring the repeaters where they can be standalone. Can that be done remotely, or do you have to do a site visit for that?
And the question was to reconfigure the repeaters. Does that have to be done remotely or on site? And you're talking about the DTMF, so we can.
You talk about where they can if
separate them.
Traffic and you want to
Yes.
segregate them
Yep.
instead of being a linked system.
Great question. It can be done on any of the repeaters. So I could be on the hub repeater and control the repeater in Brentwood, the repeater link controller, or control the one in Kirkland or Fairview. So it can be done anywhere just with DTMF on a keypad. You can bring repeaters up and down.
So that control is all over the air. It's radio rather than internet circuits or things like that.
Correct. Oh, that's great. I'm glad you brought that up. The WCARES repeater system is not dependent on the internet, period. There's no connection to it from the internet. Now, we did have Echolink running for a while. I don't think it's not on the air anymore, but that was just a donor radio talking into the hub repeater. So, but no, it's not dependent. The only thing it's dependent on is electricity to keep running, and then the system just to stay functioning. Great question.
Internet is a backup.
It's what?
It's a backup. Backup.
What about the backup?
Internet is a backup. TCP/IP, and there is a backup rather than the other way around.
But it's not connected at all. I may not follow you, Steve. It's not connected at all.
Bill, is there any plans for expanding the system beyond 5 repeaters, specifically in the Spring Hill area? That looks like one part of the county that is not heavily covered.
Repeat the question.
Yeah, so the question was, are there any opportunities in the future to expand the system and specifically the Spring Hill Thompson Station area? I have had a couple requests to put another repeater in that area. There are no plans written right now to add another analog repeater. We just recently added 3 DMR repeaters. We do have the M-Tiers repeater there covering Spring Hill. It's not out of the question. And then DMR, oh, and I didn't even bring this up. We've got a Fusion VHF repeater running at the landfill, which is not documented anywhere. You're hearing it here first. So it's running at the landfill, and it is connected to the internet.
The Spring Hill group, the Shark, has a repeater. I think they said you have one up now. Any chance of hooking into that one?
Yeah, hi, K4OJ, the president of the Spring Hill Amateur Radio Club, and we have M5AAA repeater. It's a 70 centimeters repeater. It's currently sitting on someone's residence on about 80 feet high. It doesn't have the greatest coverage, but that's what we have right now. And I mean, there's plans or an opportunity to link it, we'll be happy to do so. But that might be a conversation we can start.
Yeah, let's have a conversation. Has that repeater been coordinated through Sarah?
The repeater is coordinated.
Okay.
It's on repeater book and everything. And we do have access to the fire station, the tower on the fire station, which is pretty high up there. I have communication with Mark Gandy.
Yeah, I know Mark. Yeah, I know Mark. Yeah.
And he offered me, access to that area, so if we can set up a machine there.
So let's have the conversation about that. And
Let's kind of summarize this for the Zoom folks.
yeah, so the offer was, well, the information was that there's a UHF 70 centimeter repeater in Spring Hill. It's at about the 80-foot elevation above ground right now. And we were going to have a further conversation about, because I tell you, the fire station, when it talks to the repeater that's sitting at Heritage. So that's the public safety radio system is there, and that's how they communicate is on, and because we provide all their communications for the city of Spring Hill for Williamson EMS, Spring Hill Police, and Spring Hill Fire. We provide all that. As a matter of fact, they're dispatched out of here.
Okay, if those of you that are on Zoom, if you have questions for Zoom, put them in the chat, and Ronnie is going to repeat them. Ronnie, do you have any questions? Not yet. Okay. Ted.
Excuse me. You were showing maps with the locations around the county that were not part of where the repeaters are, and that little numbers below them beginning with 7 Tango and 8 Tango. What do those signify?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the question was on the maps, and I'll go back to one of them. What is the 7 TAC, 8 TAC? Those are, and I'm not allowed to talk about this, but what this is these are where all of our interoperability repeaters are located for public safety. That's 700 megahertz and 800 megahertz repeaters, and the nomenclature is 7 TAC 74, such as in Heritage there, and 7 TAC 52 and 8 TAC 94. We've got 3 interoperable repeaters for public safety to use at Heritage. Plus, we have UHF and VHF assets there too that are nationwide frequencies and channels and that people can go to. So if we had a bunch of emergency responders come into Williamson County and they were in the Spring Hill, Thompson Station area and they don't have access to our radio system, which they wouldn't, these are nationwide, got nationwide PL tones on them and nationwide frequencies that they should have in their radios, and then we can patch them together with the local folks. So they are for interoperability. We're probably one of the few counties. We actually have a repeater also in south of Columbia at Arbor Knoll, and because we spend a lot of time in Murray County, especially EMS and the Spring Hill Fire Service responds mutual aid with Columbia Fire. So we have repeaters that they can use to talk to each other on. Great question. I love talking about interoperability.
Is there any plans to add D-Star to this repeater system?
Is there any plans to add D-Star? There is not currently.
Just curious, related to GMRS, I know you're not talking about my are they generally the same repeater system locations that the WCARES stuff is at?
Yeah, so the question is, are the GMRS repeaters located at the same location as WCARES? The answer to that's yes, with the exception of the Kirkland site. The only thing that's out there is the UHF repeater. The GMRS repeaters, and we're going to put up 4 more. So all 8 repeater pairs will be on the air. The next site to go up will be Fairview, and then the Grassland site, which we don't have a tower for that yet. We're going to put it at the Brentwood Tower site, and then when the Grassland Tower is built, we will move it. The concept there is to have GMRS throughout the community. And you think about it, we'll have a GMRS repeater. We've got one at Heritage, so Thompson Station, Spring Hill, Franklin, Brentwood, Grassland, Fairview, Nolensville, and College Grove. That's 8 repeaters. There's only 8 available. We'll have each community covered. Now, Those are going to be connected to the microwave backhaul on our 6 gigahertz backhaul, and we'll be able to, that puts it on the network. We'll be able, with a laptop, be able to sit right here and access each one of those 8 repeaters. So we could set 8 laptops up right here or in the dispatch center. It could be on their radio consoles. They'll be able to access those. And the importance of that is, in case all other communications fail, and we need, when the cell phone service is down, not that that would ever happen, but when the cell phone service is down, and I'm living in Nolensville, and I need an ambulance, how am I going to get that ambulance? If I can't make a phone call, or I can't get in touch with somebody now, us here, I would say we're a level above GMRS, right? But there's nothing wrong with GMRS, it's just another piece of the pie. My vision is I see that as a way to communicate with the public more than the amateur radio piece, because I can get on eBay and buy a GMRS radio, right? But, Mr. Waterman?
All these systems.
Steve, use the microphone.
Am I on?
You're on.
Are all these systems, including the one we just talked about, and the analog and DMR, all those on dispatch?
So the question is, are all those systems we just talked about accessible through dispatch? DMR is not. GMRS will be. And we used to have, and I really should have tested this before I say this, we used to be able to dial 911 on your radio, and it would open up. Now it would need to be, I need to see if that's still working. Does anybody know if that's still working? On your DTMF pad, on your amateur radio, and you were on the WCARES repeater system, dial 911, opens up the radio in dispatch, and you could call for help. I will follow up on that and see if that's still functional. That would be for last ditch emergencies only, because you're going to be talking to somebody that probably doesn't have their amateur radio license. Now, a lot of the folks in the 911 center do have their amateur radio license, but not all of them do. But during, if you had a dire emergency, cell phone wasn't available, life-threatening, you could be able to get hold of a 911 telecommunicator. That was a great question, made me think about that a little more. Any other questions, Gary?
I'm going to go around whose guidelines here. And Phil, could you just show on the map where the DMR repeaters are at, and WinLink repeaters, just for overall familiarity?
Well, I don't have them marked. DMR is at Century Court, Nolensville. Yeah, and there's one in Sumner County.
Williamson County North.
There was an opportunity. I remember somebody, and it may have been Hilton, many, many years ago. I'm pretty sure it was Hilton. Said, can we do anything about the portable coverage in downtown Nashville? I said, and I remember this. I'm pretty sure it was you. And I remember I put that back here. That could have been 10 years ago. Well, we finally did something about portable coverage in downtown Nashville. So between the Nolensville site and Music Mountain, we've got DMR coverage on amateur radio. And
TEMA is at Sidco and...
oh, yeah. Yeah, when you're talking about DMR, then there's all sorts of selections there.
TEMA has right there.
Yep. And what was the other part of your question? GMRS.
WinLink in Nolensville.
Yeah, WinLink at Nolensville. And that's on V or U? V? Or both? VHF. We're going to be putting WinLink at Heritage, getting it back going again. And, well, of course, there's WinLink here, HF.
But that's on the shares. That's
Yeah, on shares.
We have amateur VHF at Nolensville. I guess the Heritage would be UHF, I think. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yep. Does that answer your question?
Are there any more questions? Any Zoom questions?
I've talked too long because Cliff had to change his battery.
You have not talked too long. So
I'd like to comment.
Yep.
Bill's nearing retirement, those of you who have not heard that in July. You just heard a presentation by somebody that many places would love to have somebody this knowledgeable of radio and communications as their leader of public safety.
Amen.
But he's had this vision, as he says, back from the late 80s. And when I retired in 2002, became a member of WCARES, we started the classes. Then we added repeaters. I mean, most amateur groups don't have this. So please really express your appreciation to Bill for what all he's done during his career, and he will continue to be around, I hope, for a long, long time as part of WCARES in his post-retirement days. But thank you, Bill, for all of us.
Yeah,
Thank
Bill,
you.
for your years of service.
Thank you for those comments. And now, if there's no other questions, I just got a few other comments, if that's okay. And it's really about WCARES, and I appreciate those comments, Hilton. And I talked about the success. What is the magic? What is the glue that holds WCARES together? And I mentioned it earlier, and I truly believe it's because it's not a club. And I say club because of dues and who's taking care of the repeater and who's going out there today. All that stuff's taken care of. The reason it's taken care of, and I took a beating on social media about this too, on QRZ, and because, you know, government shouldn't have any business in purchasing amateur radio equipment. And there's quite a few folks that are, and I say, yes, we do have business. Building the infrastructure, building that foundation brought everybody to this room today. I think even if you're new, and it started 25 years ago, it started. And all that, again, is documented on WCARES.org. So amateur radio I look at as a big pie. There's all sorts of pieces. There's WinLink. There's the slice of WinLink. There's the slice of DMR. There's contesting. There's emergency communications. There's POTA. I don't know if anybody here has heard of POTA, but I love that. You saw my family photos, right? Antennas in the park, right? That's great stuff. So there's that e-com piece. There's the hobby piece. And this group here just shows how you can bring all those. We've got one thing in common. I think one is serving the community, but it could be a hobby. It could be, you could be as serious as Steve Waterman, and he's pretty darn serious sometimes, right? So all these different pieces come together to make this pie in the amateur radio world, and it's so important. And the success of WCARES is sitting right here in this room, and those that couldn't be here. And it's that we can communicate like we do every day. And Williamson County is blessed to have a group of people like this sitting here today. And that keeps...
Bill Jorgensen.
It's not about me though, Steve, and I appreciate that comment. It's about the group. And we did have a vision. Well, we did have a vision, and I mean, you could go back and start talking about Jack Cox, and I didn't want to bring up names because I'll forget somebody, and Bill Girth, and Doc Randy, and Myron, and all that's documented very well, and you should go read it sometime if you haven't. But I thank you, each one of you, for what you do every day, and I know I sleep good at night. And some places do not have this going. I would say most places across the country do not have this relationship. It's really all about relationships, and most places don't have this going on with their local government, their emergency management, their 911, and their public safety. And we are changing that, I think, across the whole United States when people see what's going on here. How are you doing that? I'm sure y'all have had conversations, some of you here and there, of what's going on in Williamson County. I hear this going on, that going on. So from the bottom of my heart, and I will stay involved. I've already got an application for the EMA reserves and WCARES. Actually, I'll probably be able to spend more time. You'll probably be seeing me more after I retire. And not that I'm counting, but July 12th at 4:30 p.m. is... that doesn't, I mean, that's it. But thank you so much, and appreciate your time, and appreciate your questions, appreciate what you do. Thank you.
Thank you again, Bill. We really appreciate all that you have done for Williamson County.